Uncharted 4: A Thief's End was released for PS4 in May 2016, and when it did, it earned widespread acclaim from fans and critics alike, many hailing it the pinnacle of the Uncharted series. How true that can be is up for debate, as only Uncharted 2 is in IGN's list of best games of all time, and we know how objective they are. The game was praised for its stunning visuals and stellar narrative, which makes sense as Neil Druckmann was on board as one of the writers. Neil had already made a name for himself with the monumental success of The Last of Us in 2013, which is also a stunning visual, stellar narrative game, one which we still talk about over a decade later. In Uncharted 4, Druckmann's influence is apparent. The Uncharted series has always had a story, but it's never really been at the forefront of the game's philosophy. The characters are brilliant, mind you. They're charming and likeable, and you'd watch a trilogy of simple but well-made action movies with them, which is pretty much what you already did if you played the original trilogy. But the story they were set in was always predictable. Chase the MacGuffin, fight bad guys, save the day. It's simple, but sometimes that's what you want. It's the reason why Fast Car 9 did so well at the box office, but Last Night in Soho, despite being a leagues better film, did markedly worse. Naughty Dog's games are well known for their cinematography. They're narrative-rich, story-driven games with impressive visuals that drive home deep and interesting reflections of the human condition. The company brings to mind these hauntingly vivid explorations of human emotion and the choices we make in the face of adversity. At least, that's what might be brought to your mind. For me, I think of
Created and developed by Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog made a name for themselves developing some of the most iconic PlayStation games of their generation. Crash Bandicoot was a series of platformer video games released on the first PlayStation, and let's be real, you don't need me to tell you who Crash Bandicoot is. This character is about as recognisable as Sonic or Mario. However, being an Australian animal, it means he's at least twice as attractive. Jak and Daxter 2 were absolutely iconic. When they moved to the PS2, Naughty Dog took the idea of the collectathon style platformer like Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie, trimmed the fat and streamlined the game to a science. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy was a seamless open world with no load times between areas. This was something incredibly novel at the time and cannot be overstated. Jak 2 and 3 both iterated on the Jak and Daxter story and incorporated darker themes as well. Around Jak 3 is when Neil Druckmann came on board at Naughty Dog, working as a programmer. It's then no wonder that he typically writes stories with darker themes then, given that he started with Naughty Dog right in the middle of Jak's Linkin Park phase. When it came time for Naughty Dog to transition over to the PS3, the direction they took when designing video games had to change. They were, for Sony, a flagship developer whose console-exclusive games helped push console sales. But the taste of the gamers had changed. Audiences were maturing, platformers were out, and shooters were in. Naughty Dog aimed to create a new IP for the new console generation, focusing on realistic human characters as opposed to stylized ones previous hardware limited them to. In 2007, they released the first Uncharted game, an action-adventure platformer with cover-based shooting and collectible finding. Suppose they can't stray too far away from their roots, can they? I remember the first Uncharted game I played was Uncharted 2, and it's a blast. Everyone remembers that train set piece. It widened my scope for what I thought a video game could be. I immediately went back and played the first game, and then when the third game came out, it was a day one purchase. So, going into Uncharted 4, I'm already familiar with the characters and I love the games, and I think that's the best way to go into it. Spoiler warning ahead, as I will be discussing the game story, including the ending. Uncharted 4 opens with Nathan and this guy, his brother Sam, caught up in a high-speed boat chase across rough seas. You aren't told this is Nate's brother yet, however. The game introduces him here before we officially learn his relationship to Nate in another sequence coming up. Getting ahead of myself though, something interesting to note is that Sam is played by voice acting royalty Troy Baker. Just look at this guy's resume. Having him play the brother of Nathan Drake, who is himself played by prolific voice actor Nolan North, is just so entertaining to watch. The two of them are swarmed with enemy boats firing on them in all directions as you are directed to head towards an island in the distance. This sequence is broken up by a quick shooting tutorial to teach you some of the basics if you're not familiar with the mechanics. Opening on an action sequence like this is pretty smart for the game to do. It starts fast and gets the player interested immediately before we move on to slower, more plot-driven sequences, the way the Uncharted series subtly guides the player through these high adrenaline action sequences has always been impressive. Though these are basically just a straight line with some quick-time events for the player to complete, the seams are hidden in a way to convince you that you have more control than you really do, and Uncharted 4 is the ultimate illustration of this. This starting sequence really does give you the impression you could drive this boat anywhere, but the game guides you down a particular path and forces you into these scripted events, all without the player even realizing. At the end of this sequence, just as you're about to reach the island, the camera pans beside you to reveal the large ship hurtling towards you before it makes contact and the screen cuts to black. You then are greeted to a cutscene of a young Nathan Drake talking to a nun in an orphanage. This starts the first official chapter of the game, The Lure of Adventure. This chapter serves as a tutorial as well for the player, this time teaching you about the stealth and traversal mechanics of the game. The choice to go to a younger Nate for this tutorial is also a great decision by Naughty Dog, as any mistakes an inexperienced player may make can be excused narratively as inexperience from an adolescent Nathan Drake. You are then reintroduced to Sam, who is now explicitly revealed to be Nate's brother. As you continue to climb across the orphanage exterior, you are treated to a bunch of dialogue between the brothers. This serves to flesh out the characters and for you, the player, to get invested in them. Though Nathan, if you've played the other games, needs none of this to invest the player, as presumably you're already invested in his story, Sam's character needs this. It's a tough sell to introduce a long-lost brother in the fourth entry in a media franchise and convince the audience to care about them, but they do the best they can. Once the boys make it out of the orphanage, Sam breaks the news to Nate that he will be leaving to pursue a work opportunity, the money from which will help support the both of them once Nate's old enough to leave the orphanage. Nate is understandably upset about this, as Sam is the only person he has there. In fact, you can actually see Nate go through the 5 stages of grief upon hearing the news.
What's a little bit?
Like a year. At the most, and then I'll be back before you even know it, alright?
You're bailing on me.
Come on, don't be so dramatic.
What, so it wasn't bad enough to leave me in that place? How could you do this to me, Sam?
Wait, I'm doing this for you. The money I make is for the both of us. And then in a couple of years, when you're out...
Years? Take me with you.
I can barely support myself.
I'll pitch in.
I know you think the orphanage sucks.
You have no idea.
Yeah, but it's the best thing for you right now. Alright? Just gotta trust me on that one.
It's not fair.
Hey, nothing about our lives has been fair. But we've made it work, right?
Sure.
Sam then reveals, in an attempt to cheer Nate up, that he has another surprise for him, that he found where their mother's stuff is and they're going to get it.
You mean steal it?
It's not stealing if it was ours to begin with.
I'm pretty sure the cops aren't going to see it that way.
Well, then let's not get caught. You ready for this?
The screen fades and we start Chapter 2, Infernal Place. Nathan Drake is engaged in a fight inside a Panamanian prison, and the first scene here is yet another tutorial for the player, this time about hand-to-hand combat. You can see the length the developers have gone to integrate these tutorials into gameplay. Many games section off a tutorial for players to go through when they start. They run through the controls one after another and then send you on your way. Uncharted 4 compartmentalizes its tutorials across different gameplay sections. This provides a narrative justification for why the tutorials are taking place, but also reinforces player learning by layering on new concepts gradually. This approach helps inexperienced players retain this information better and ensures player engagement with the game's mechanics. The next sequence has Nate thrown into solitary confinement before some time passes and he's escorted out. You follow this guard for some time before finding out that he's actually working with you, and everything that has happened so far has been planned, a classic Prison Break setup. You then complete another climbing section, this time introducing a couple of new mechanics. Sliding on loose gravel, you can control your direction somewhat, which could potentially lead to some interesting level design. The second new mechanic, the one that is much more memorable, is the grappling hook. This hook allows you to swing across distances too far for Nate to jump, but as they show almost directly after, can be used in conjunction with sliding to put pressure on the player with time-sensitive inputs. You then enter this tower, read some notes and solve a puzzle. Puzzles are another gameplay element intrinsic to Uncharted, and this one serves as their introduction in this entry. Overall, a pretty simple puzzle to solve with very low stakes. You could just brute force this if you had no idea, with no real consequences for picking wrong, but it signals to the player that this type of gameplay will come up again in the future. We go back down, a cutscene starts, and we're introduced to Rafe, a mutual acquaintance of both Sam and Nate.
So how much does he know?
Enough that he wants a cut.
Shit.
We have this brawl, which we eventually lose, and what's a good metaphor for this? The f*** does that even mean? No one's ever said that. Just before this guy can give Nate a closer shave than a barber on caffeine, fate decided it was time for a commercial break. The corrupt prison guard from earlier breaks up the fight and finds the statue Nate found earlier in the tower. He escorts you into his office for holding onto contraband and threatens his way into a 25% cut of the treasure. This is where we get to learn something about Rafe though, as when they go to shake hands, Rafe stabs the guard and kills him. Rafe is impulsive and mercilessly cutthroat, absolutely willing to murder in cold blood.
Jesus.
That's that.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Nate and friends then go through this prison escape sequence where again we get shown some character traits. Rafe is selfish and will push ahead, acting only in his own interest, whereas Sam will stick to his brother Nate and help him, even if it puts himself in danger. Just as they are about to escape, Sam is tragically shot and falls down into the prison below, presumably dead.
Sam, no. No, you hold on! Hold on! No! Sam!
Now, I'm in two minds about this one, as on the one hand, the story seems to spoil itself with the earlier boat sequence, where Sam is very much alive. Regardless, however, it's clear that Nate believes his brother is now dead, and we must suspend our disbelief for the sake of the story. Once escaped, we get the opening credits, which have a bunch of nods to previous games in the series. Uncharted 4 is a celebration of the games that came before, and positions itself as the final chapter of Nathan Drake's story. You can tell this is the case because of what is implied by the subtitle of the game, A Thief's End. Alright, present day now, and we start Chapter 3, The Malaysia Job. Nate has retired from treasure hunting and is now working in salvage. Thrilling stuff. In scuba gear, we need to retrieve this cargo container by leading these cables around and fastening them. The way these cables behave is pretty satisfying and shows off some impressive game physics, especially for 2016. We retrieve the cargo without too much issue, and it's clear Drake is unsatisfied with his new career.
Wow. Look at that. We struck copper.
It definitely seems like a downgrade from his action hero shenanigans of past games. His boss, Jameson, approaches Nate about this Malaysia job, not for the first time it seems, but Nate won't do a thing without the proper permits, which seems like a departure from the Nathan Drake we've known up to this point.
Got some news from a contact about that wreck off the coast of Malaysia.
Oh, no.
The ship's intact.
Yeah?
Cargo's right for the picking.
You get the permits?
No, he did not get the permits. Can't no one get the damn permits.
Of course not.
But Nate, don't you see that works in our favor? No permits means no competition. The ship is ours.
No permits means no go.
Fade to Nathan's attic, where we find him filing away the folder for the Malaysia job. Chapter 4, A Normal Life begins, and we're able to walk around and interact with a bunch of cool items from Nate's past. It's charming to see all these items together in the same space, even if they've been tucked away for Nate to forget about. We pick up this toy gun and...
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Serving as a second tutorial on gun combat, a refresher on something that was touched on in the opening moments. But also, we get to see Nate actually have some fun.
That'll teach you. See ya.
It's clear that this treasure hunting and bad guy fighting is something he misses. We go downstairs and join Elena, who Nate is now married to. It's nice to finally see this with how their relationship has been over the previous games. It was clear that they'd end up together. They always did, but the question was, how long were Naughty Dog willing to stretch it out for? To bite the bullet and have them properly together, it's nice. You then get to play a bit of Naughty Dog history right here with some classic Crash Bandicoot, flavoured with some banter between Nate and Elena.
Yeah, well, you would know.
What's that?
Nothing.
Talking smack again.
Stay focused.
No matter what you do, you can't beat her high score, so once you lose, you get this exchange.
Hey, are you happy?
Yeah, of course. You? Really?
Come here.
Although the two are comfortable, it's clear that their current life doesn't fulfill them. We then fade to Nate working in his office when he is greeted by a very special someone.
Yeah, can I help you?
Yeah, I'm, looking for my little brother. Nothing less gray in the temples.
I feel this reveal is dampened by the fact that we as the audience knew Sam didn't die. However, to Nate this would come as a shock.
How? I thought you... I saw you get shot.
The two catch up, Nate talks about some of his exploits across the previous games, and then we get to play as Sam playing out the events that led to him breaking out of prison with the help of Hector Alcazar. Alcazar then threatens Sam into agreeing to find Avery's treasure within 3 months, promising him half of it.
We'll find it. I swear. How long?
6 months. People are lazy. 3 months.
3 months is...
3 months. Half the treasure.
This situation that Sam is in convinces Nate to help him out, because of course he will. His brother's life is at stake. He calls up Elena and lies about taking the Malaysia job.
It's me. Yeah, listen, you're not gonna believe this. Jameson just walked in here with the permits. Yeah. I know, but, it's like I'm gonna take that Malaysia job after all.
We then begin Chapter 6, Always a Thief, where we see Sam and Nate in jumpsuits performing reconnaissance on a cliff facing the Rossi estate in Italy, where their target, a 17th century cross that will lead them to Captain Avery's lost treasure, is being auctioned. After some platforming, we infiltrate the estate and reunite with a familiar face for Uncharted fans, Victor Sullivan. It's always comforting to see Sully and Nate working together. They always have really good rapport and they just bounce off each other in really fun ways.
You remember my dead brother, right?
We find that the lot order for the auction items has been changed, which could spell disaster for their plans. Sully runs into Nadine Ross, the owner of Shoreline, a private military organisation. We'll see her again later, but for now she's not that important.
Glad that's not a real gun.
Sam and Nate sneak their way through the manor, and Sam manages to get himself a disguise. We find out that Rafe is here as well, and he is with Nadine.
Working for an American.
We've partnered up on this one.
We have competition for Avery's cross, and knowing Rafe's past, we know crossing him could lead to trouble. After another stealth section, finally Nate can create a diversion, allowing our heroes to nab Avery's cross. Now everyone's on high alert though, so we must sneak our way out. Naturally, this doesn't all go as planned, and you're forced to shoot your way to your escape.
Nathan, time to go!
Hang on!
Sam breaks open the cross and we find a note, directing us on where to go. For anyone not familiar with the Uncharted series, this is how the story of the games typically go. You find something that directs you somewhere, which lets you find another clue, and that sends you to where another clue is. It's a simple formula, but it works.
We're going to Scotland.
The trio head to Scotland, which is where Chapter 8, The Grave of Henry Avery, begins. Here you can see a bit where sliding leads to an interesting bit of level design. It's certainly more interesting than just making the player walk over there. But it never really expands too much more upon this. There is one section later on in the level where they kind of create some puzzles using the environment using this, but this is about as far as it goes in the entire game. You then get some more combat sections. This is how they typically play out through the game. You often start the scenario in stealth, taking guys out slowly until someone spots you, and then you begin a massive shootout. You hide behind cover and take them out one by one, and the enemies will regularly throw explosives where you're hiding to flush you out. Much of the rest of the level switches between combat, platforming and puzzle solving. We get another lead, Rafe tries to kill us, and then we're on our way. Nate lies to Elena again, and we're in Madagascar for Chapter 10, The 12 Towers. This section might be the game at its most gorgeous. The environment is so lush and the horizon is picturesque. As you drive around in your Jeep, you find these areas where you need to use the car's winch to drag yourself up, and I don't know, but there's something so satisfying about doing this. I'd damn near play a whole off-roading game with this mechanic.
Feast your eyes, gentlemen. Wow.
Wow, indeed. I get that this is essentially just the artists patting themselves on the back here, but it really is an impressive visual. Naturally, as you progress, there's goons you need to take out, some near-death experiences, another batch of goons, and we're off to our next location, Chapter 11, Hidden in Plain Sight. Nate and Sully are in a crowded town in Madagascar, nearing one of two potential towers their next clue could be in. You climb this rock tower, solve some puzzles, and learn where to go next, when Nate gets a phone call from Rafe. We find out that Rafe had hacked their phone, so now he knows what we know, and also that Rafe has used their phone's GPS to track him down and that Sam is in danger.
Nate, one more thing. Nate!
What?
You do realize that your phones are equipped with GPS, right?
Nate and Sully fight their way out of this town, and then we begin one of the most memorable action set pieces of the whole game. This armoured truck hunts us down these streets as we duck and weave our way to the tower in the distance, and once we approach, we find Sam being pursued by a bunch of these shoreline goons. Nate and Sully give chase. Nate grapples onto this crane and is flung around the air under this bridge, dodging structures before climbing aboard. Nate finds his way through the convoy, jumping between trucks, blowing up jeeps and commandeering a vehicle for himself before being dragged across the ground, climbing his way up and continuing to push his way up to meet Sam. Nate finally catches up before being run into by that truck from before. Pinned under the vehicle, the fuel ignites, putting Nate in a dangerous position. Luckily, he manages to get out, then joins Sam on his motorbike as they are chased down by that armoured truck. No matter how much you shoot at it, the truck continues to follow, inching closer and closer to Sam and Nate. As it looks like it's about to be destroyed, Sam slides under a narrow gap and the truck crashes into it, vaulting itself over and nearly on top of Sam and Nate. With that, they've survived and continue their journey.
Holy shit. Yeah.
High on their recent success, they stop off for the night where Nate finds Elena. Nate's lies have caught up to him, and we must experience a genuinely heart-wrenching exchange between the two.
Just stop. Was there ever a Malaysia job?
Come on, wait. Elena, wait!
I don't get you.
Look, I wanted to tell you.
You know what? Enough.
No, I wanted to, but how could I?
I don't know. Just say it.
I had to protect you.
That is bullshit, Nate. You just didn't have the nerve to face me again.
I knew you would react like this.
How would you react? You lied to me for weeks. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it. And now you have a brother. Who are you?
Come on. I'm me. Come on, it's me. It's different this time.
Oh my God.
I have to save him. I don't even care about the treasure.
The look on your face when you walked into this room. If you're done lying to me, then you should stop lying to yourself. I got a plane to catch. You do what you have to do.
This moment recontextualizes everything that has happened up to this point. All this fun treasure hunting brought to an abrupt halt. Everything about this scene is so masterfully done. The dialogue is spot on. You can hear the hurt in everything Elena says as she questions everything. How much has Nate lied about? She is so genuinely hurt by Nate's actions, and he maintains that he's justified. Nate's blind to her hurt, and he even lashes out at Sully for trying to help.
Want to be helpful, Sullivan? Go keep an eye on her.
He doubles down on helping his brother. After all, this is a life or death situation for him. Nate is willing to lose everything if it means he'll have his brother back. We then begin chapter 12, At Sea, where Sam and Nate sail around some islands, find some clues, do some platforming, solve some puzzles. You get the idea. At the end of this, a storm starts brewing as some of these shoreline guys show up, and this is where the events at the very start of the game took place, so we know what happens next.
Nathan! They're gaining on us!
Nate is washed ashore after being struck by the boat and must find his way around in the rain as we begin chapter 13, Marooned. You do some climbing, explore around, and then we get introduced to another new mechanic even this far into the game. Nate gains a piton, a climbing pick that he can drive into a section of wall to create a foothold for him to climb up further. It's pretty cool. I only wish it was introduced sooner instead of over halfway through the game. We take out some enemies and then we're reunited with Sam once again.
I nearly shot your head off.
Nate expresses his doubts, but Sam is stubborn. He must find the treasure to save himself. As the two argue, Nate sees something and comes to realize they found Libertalia, the hidden pirate colony Henry Avery created.
Holy crap.
We then begin chapter 14, Join Me in Paradise. After some exploring and a little celebration from the pair, they come across some more shoreline enemies which they need to take out before progressing. Once that's dealt with, the Drake brothers make their way to the Treasury building, where we begin chapter 15, The Thieves of Libertalia. If it seems like I've skipped over the last couple of chapters, it's because there's not that much story-related stuff in those chapters I want to highlight. They find that the Treasury building has been trashed, which isn't a good sign for the supposed pirate utopia. Sam and Nate climb up a tower when Shoreline shows up again. The pair try and escape but are stopped by Nadine, who manages to kick both their asses.
I'm tired of her.
Oh, no, you don't.
Get
Nadine!
You're fast, but you're not that fast.
Just as the fight ends, Rafe shows up and Sam takes Nadine as a hostage. Rafe's confident because they wouldn't kill anyone in cold blood, but it seems Sam really was prepared to. During this exchange, Rafe reveals to us that Sam has been lying. Alcazar is dead, Rafe broke Sam out of prison, and Sam's life isn't being threatened.
Dr. Alcazar died in a shootout in Argentina like 6 months ago. I'm the one that got Samuel out. Sam, what kind of story did you cook up? Alcazar? Really? You lied?
The whole reason for Nate being out here was a lie, throwing his whole life away, and what for? Rafe attempts to kill Nate, but Sam stops him, and Nate is knocked over the edge of a cliff into a river. While he's unconscious, we get chapter 16, The Brothers Drake. We follow up with the boys after the events of the first chapter, where they sneak into a mansion where their mother's belongings are being held. There's some platforming, a bunch of dialogue fleshing out the two brothers' relationships before we find their mother's belongings, and unfortunately stumble across the owner of the mansion. She's sympathetic though once she learns who our mother is, and we get a bit of information about her and what she did.
You knew our mom?
She worked for me. Your mother was the most brilliant historian I have ever met.
The police were already called though, but before the woman can explain to them not to worry, she collapses, leaving the boys in a very sticky situation. They manage to escape to Sam's motorbike and ride away, but as they realise they cannot now return to their former lives, they decide to leave and continue on with their mother's work. Their mother was convinced Francis Drake had heirs, so they adopt their new identities of Nathan and Samuel Drake.
What do you say? Nathan Drake?
We fade to Elena patching up Nate as Nate finishes explaining everything to her. This marks the start of chapter 17, For Better or Worse. This chapter has Nate and Elena working together to try and track down and save Sam. Nate and Elena's chemistry really shines through here, and although Nate clearly hurt Elena before, it's nice to see them still support each other after a fight. It makes the relationship feel far more real and kind of reflects how real life relationships work. After some more rounds of shoreline thugs, we get this exchange.
I wasn't trying to protect you. It's just, I made a promise that I was done with this life.
We both did.
Yeah, but I broke it. I didn't tell you because I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
Of losing you. I guess I was, protecting myself.
Nate finally apologising properly, and you love to see it. Nate and Elena make it to New Devon, and they enter to find all of Avery's pirate colleagues dead. Greed and distrust had corrupted the men, and thus their peaceful pirate colony was no more. After some exploring, more shoreline show up, as expected, and then the two are thrown into a crypt that they must explore. You come across these exploding mummies, and they are honestly the worst thing that made it into this game. They are so ridiculously frustrating to walk around. At the end of this crypt, they find themselves in a trap, manage to get themselves free, and of course, more shoreline. Fight your way through, you get reunited with Sully. Oh, and Sam. Sam still wants to go after Avery's treasure. The man is obsessed with this. He's clung onto this for so many years, and it's the only thing that gives him any meaning. Nate convinces him to go home with them though, and to leave Rafe to find the treasure. Their lives are worth more than some old pirate treasure after all. Sam, however, once the opportunity arises, ditches the group and goes after the treasure once again. Nate must go after him to save his brother, but this time is different than before. This time he actually communicates this with Elena, and he's doing it for the right reasons.
Don't even think about not coming back.
I love you.
Nate catches up to where Rafe, Nadine, and Sam are upon Henry Avery's ship, where the final confrontation happens. Nadine turns on Rafe, pointing to the dead pirates in the corner, Henry Avery and Thomas Tew, who killed each other over the treasure. Greed getting the best of the both of them.
Avery and Tew. They killed each other.
Good for them. What's the point?
Everyone obsessed with his treasure gets what they deserve.
Nadine, having no interest of dying here, leaves Rafe and Nate to die, escaping the flaming ship. Rafe, however, doesn't care. He has grown mad over the treasure and begins to fight Nate. Despite his vast wealth, Rafe wants nothing else than this treasure. It's one thing he can say he actually earned. Nate looks defeated, but before Rafe can end the fight, Nate cuts a rope and a bundle of treasure falls, crushing Rafe with the gold. An apt metaphor. Nate and Sam now must escape the ship somehow, though Sam is pinned and Nate cannot free him. Nate comes up with the idea of using a cannon to blast open the floorboards, flooding the room and allowing them to remove the beam. The pair escape and thus marks the end of the game. Sam and Sully go off together, and Nate decides he's ready to retire with Elena, for real this time. Nate is ready to move on to a new chapter in his life, no longer living in the past. Elena later surprises Nate with the news that they had purchased the company that Nate works for, and she managed to get the permits needed for the Malaysia job. Things are looking good for Nate. We get to play Crash Bandicoot again, and this time it's actually possible to beat Elena's score. The house looks different though, and we find out that we are controlling a young girl named Cassie, Nate and Elena's daughter. You explore around and find this cabinet full of stuff from Nate and Elena's adventures, this time not strewn around a dusty attic, but stored properly. Experiences to reminisce on rather than something to obsess over. Nate and Elena catch her and decide to let her know all about their past, and then the credits roll. I have a story I want to tell you. When Uncharted 4 came out in 2016, I know I picked it up, I know I owned it, and it was on my shelf after all those years. However, I never played it, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. Over that period of time in the late 2010s, I was just generally in a slump. My mental health wasn't great, and I was overworked, and I didn't have time to focus on these big new games. Instead of playing these new, highly acclaimed video games, I just replayed a bunch of games I'd already beaten. Pikmin is one of my favourite games of all time. I know I played that a lot. As of the Pokemon games, I did like a lot of Pokemon challenge runs like Nuzlocke and stuff. Dark Souls 3 released in 2016, and it's probably one of the few games released that year that I actually did play the shit out of. Outside of that though, like I tried to play Arkham Knight, it didn't click like the previous ones did, so I dropped it. I tried Bioshock, but I dropped that after a couple of hours as well. I enjoyed my time with it, I just never felt excited to pick it back up after that one session. Doom 2016, I dropped that after like 20 minutes of playing. I don't know, nothing gripped me, and I know that's no fault of the games themselves. I just couldn't focus on them. It just didn't scratch the itch that I wanted scratched. The only thing I can really bring myself to do is to replay games that I was already comfortable with. Game releases continued. Some of them I did play, some of them I finished. However, many of them I miss. 2020 comes around, the pandemic hits. I take the opportunity to leave the job that I had at the time and study at university full time, which was a big change for me. At least here in Australia, like the government payments increased to the point that I didn't have to work. I could just study during lockdown. Suddenly I have a lot of free time, and like I look for games to play. I look to my shelf and I see Uncharted 4 and I ignore it. And I look back into Apex and I just keep grinding. My backlog by this point is bloated. There's heaps of experiences I've missed out on. Despite this, I just continue playing Apex. I've played a fair bit of Apex. Oh, is that all? Oh, that's PS5. Alright, PS4. Oh, shit. For those of you who aren't aware, Apex Legends is a battle royale game developed by Respawn Entertainment, the company behind Titanfall 1 and 2. Apex Legends has a series of characters you can choose to play as, and each of these legends is unique, featuring different abilities and niches you can slot into your squad of 3 players. This is the thing that differentiates Apex from other battle royales, and something I found really satisfying when playing. Learning how to play a specific character and how they best interact with your team kept for a very engaging gameplay loop. Weapons spawned randomly across the map, however, your character's kit was the same each time you played. Knowing when to place your heal drone as lifeline or where to throw your ultimate as bang roar could decide the fate of a game and can be incredibly satisfying when done well. For these reasons and more, I was hooked and sunk many hours into that game. November 2022 comes around and Daryl Talks Games, one of my favourite YouTubers, releases this video. If you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend you go give it a watch as well as its follow-up video, links in the description. In these videos, Daryl talks about finishing his gaming backlog by canonizing it into an Excel spreadsheet and systematically hacking away at it until nothing remains. It's an entertaining watch and he tells a phenomenal story of his journey doing this, so much so that it inspires me. I don't give myself a time limit the same way that he does. However, I do write down all the games that I haven't played that I want to get to into an Excel spreadsheet. It takes a long time, but the results are so worth it. Daryl gives great advice on how to tackle a gaming backlog, and it's at this point I get serious about it. I remove games as I go, I write down a few thoughts about them, and I feel achievement every time I see this total number go down. It's a good feeling. Uncharted 4 is the first game I completed after that follow-up video, and as such, it's the first game that I wrote notes on after beating. It's part of why I ended up wanting to create this YouTube channel, so I can reflect on these games after I play them and create some kind of evidence that I'm getting through my backlog. To create something I can point to and say, look at everything I accomplished, and maybe eventually compel someone out there to do the same. To officially work through their backlog, motivate them to play those games that they own that they just never got around to. We all have a backlog, and I'm going to prove to all of you it's surmountable, and if I can do it, so can you. Overall, Uncharted 4 is a fantastic experience. Some of my fondest memories of the PS3 era include me playing as Nathan Drake across the 4 games. And yes, I include PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. If Kratos can mention it in God of War, then I consider it canon. Returning to Nate's story in Uncharted 4 after so long away is comforting, like catching up with an old friend. Years have gone by, but it feels like no time has passed at all. If you somehow fall into this Venn diagram of people who have played the first 3 games without playing 4, which is basically just me, you owe it to yourself to complete Nathan Drake's story and play Uncharted 4. You won't regret it. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is intended to be the end of Nathan Drake's story. It's a story about obsession and relationships and hurting the ones we love most, but it's also a story about acceptance and moving on, of leaving the past behind and not turning your back to it, but accepting it and starting something new. I used to get really upset looking at how much time I spent on Apex Legends. If I never played it, I wouldn't have a backlog. If I spent all those hours playing new games and chasing new experiences, I'd be caught up. I wouldn't be making this channel, as I would have played everything I wanted to play. But it's important not to dwell on that. To accept that the past is the past and pursue new adventures. I put my focus on single player experiences and trying to complete my backlog. I have so many titles in here that are must play games for one reason or another. BioShock, Outer Wilds, Fallout New Vegas, Chrono Trigger. Some of the greatest video games of all time just sit there and I've never seen what they have to offer. I'm ready to start that new chapter, to dive in and see what they have in store. Those hours playing Apex Legends I can't change any more than Sam could change his time being in prison, but I shouldn't hold it against it. Instead, I should look at that time the way Nate and Elena look back on their daring adventures searching for treasure in far-off lands. Time you enjoy wasting is not time wasted. Instead, take that experience and look forward.
I just kind of thought that after we found Avery's treasure, I'd be satisfied. Instead, I've kind of left with this strange feeling of
emptiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, as thrilling as the next adventure might be, in the end, I always left with that same feeling.
Do I think that finishing my backlog will suddenly make me feel fulfilled? Of course not, I'm not that naive. But it is something for me to work towards at least, which I will as I seek to complete my gaming backlog. So yeah, that's the video. If you got that far, thank you so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. That video was a lot longer than I expected it to be. It's my first video, so I didn't want to do anything too big, so then for it to come out to like almost 40 minutes, that was completely unexpected. I had no idea that was going to happen. For the next video, I just beat Shadow of the Erdtree, like the Elden Ring DLC, and I just want to like throw my thoughts out there, so hopefully I can do a pretty good turnaround on that video and make it relatively quickly. I've already got footage and everything. Oh, speaking of footage, all the gameplay footage for Uncharted 4 comes from World of Long Plays. I'm going to have down in the description links and stuff like that. Moving forward, I'd like to actually use my own footage. I've been recording footage from all my sort of recent gameplay for a little while now, so hopefully I shouldn't have to be relying on outside footage for my videos. It was really just like, look, I really want to do a quick video on Uncharted 4. Like, I feel like it's important that the first video is on Uncharted 4 because of the circumstances surrounding me playing the game. But I didn't really want to go through and record a bunch of footage for it, when the whole point of this channel is that I work through my backlog rather than continue to procrastinate my backlog. I'd much rather be playing other games while working on a video than, you know, going back and recording a bunch of footage and setting my backlog even further behind. Speaking of, I have a Twitch. I'll have like the link on my channel, but go on, have a look. I'm gonna try to eventually get some kind of regular schedule going for that if I can. But yeah, no, come join that. Love that. If for some reason you've listened to this ranting as well at the end, thank you. Like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to hope that over time these videos will get better and become something I'm really proud of, hopefully. Like, interact, man. Like, you know, what's in your backlog? Tell me. Like, I'd love to hear some comments. You know, what's in your backlog? What are you playing? Take care. Hopefully see you at the next video. And yeah, have a good one.